talk about mental health. We're going to talk about psychology, people, things that happen.
And speaking of things that involve that area of the body, asteroids.
Asteroids, yes, there was. That's a very interesting idea, and we tweet back and forth and send text a little bit. The idea that there are comets in this and asteroids in this belt. I'm trying to. Sean would get me if I combine the two into the same thing. They're different, but
asteroids and belts.
Yeah, in the Kuiper belt. Okay, I'm going to try to attempt to dig myself out of that hole.
That's where the comets come from.
Well, that's what happens, and I think there was an article about 200 of these very large obstacles that could come back, and it's been
asteroids.
Asteroids that I think some.
By the way, I had an uncle who had a really bad case of asteroids. He had to see a doctor about that.
You see, I'm just trying to collect my thoughts and get this get this sentence out. But now, I'm struggling with it occasionally. But the idea is that, some 2,700 years ago, there's some scientific evidence that say that the Earth was bombarded by these asteroids, and it caused a lot of problems around our world. And that may come back around again because there are 200 that are sort of targeted here. And what do we do with that? So, first of all, it's a sensational article that came out that with those headlines that
we're all doomed.
They were all doomed, and we have to. That's the way they get clicks, and that's how they sell materials, both media, online, and in newspapers. And it's one of those kind of a shocking things. It's supposed to shock a little bit and get you to read further and buy the newspaper or buy the ads from the media and that kind of thing. So I don't know what you think about that. For me, it's like, okay, I think I've heard this before, but there's a little grain of it that says, hey, what if this is real? Are we ready for that? Are we just sitting duck as a planet? Or what do you think about that?
I think it's Jack Van Impe. He's one of the televangelists who kept predicting sort of the end of the world and whatnot. And he did this show where they would read the news and they would filter it through revelations and Bible verses and whatnot, and show
the end of the world thing.
So there is a thing about this investment in the end of the world that we seem to have. That there's we are drawn to it. It's a narrative that keeps popping up.
Yes, it is something about.
Speaking of, so you can hear that warning siren.
There is a warning siren in the background. I don't know if it's picking up on the mic, but that's indication that we are at 12 noon here in Columbus, Georgia, in the southeast of America.
Where it's always the end of the world. And
where it's the end of the world or not, every noon we're going to hear that siren. Just a test. I want to say that, speaking about that, just the last week or so, I think I was out at a friend's house, and this thing went off right before the rains and the sort of strong winds, maybe even tornado warning kind of thing came through, and it was like, hey, this is actually working. I don't know if everybody's paying attention to it, but we do have a system to sort of protect us from this strong weather, and with the climate change that we've so much in the news, and those of us who've watched the weather, we see that there are stronger storms, more of them, those kind of things happening. So the point being that this thing warns us, it's still going off in the background right now, it warns us of impending
doom.
That's not the word I was looking for, but in this case, maybe some strong weather or something that we need to be alerted to. So the question then, if we move back to the asteroids coming in, do we have a system like that? Is there anything that is going to warn us and say, hey, because there's been a couple of disaster movies out, I think, and parodies of all of that, where this is the end of the world, and you've got
I think there was
many times.
There was one with Bruce Willis, wasn't it?
Yes, that was one with the asteroid.
Turned out he was dead the whole time.
I don't know.
Oh, that's Sorry.
That took me off guard, but as usual. But I think what that movie was about was they had put together a plan real quick and launch a spaceship up with these cowboys who went and destroyed the asteroid or moved it out of the path. So, but I don't think the warning system here in town about thunderstorms and tornadoes not the same as asteroids coming toward Earth. 200 on the list. So I'm not sure we're ready. Are we ready? Is anybody doing anything? Somebody needs to research this.
Well, as you know, when you sent that to me, my first thought was, as always, what would Freud say? Really, that's
right.
I
know.
I got to go with this.
It's a habit.
So that's why I was saying this notion of investment, and that we may want to think about this in terms of how doomsday scenarios and doomsday narratives, they have a place in our libidinal economy. There is something that we like to, that they are. We consume dystopian future novels. That there's a long history of the Earth being destroyed. There's even a TV show, I think, that you could. I think it's still going on, or maybe it's being rebooted. Where what would the world look like if man were gone? And they sort of show you areas that what it would look like if we suddenly disappeared. And
right, I think I've seen many of those actually. A number of those movies, anyway. It seems like the plants start growing over the concrete and the buildings, and everything looks like a lush jungle again. And it's all kind of positive from a nature point of view and other kind of things.
Well, we do seem to be causing some trouble. I'm just saying,
Evidently, we have. Yeah, don't want to admit it too much in certain groups, but
if you look at all the barbecued koalas in the last couple of weeks, I just ask.
Devastating.
That's not a.
No, I hope we don't have too many of those pictures, but I'm sure somebody has to document things. But
it's bad. But the thing that we want to ask ourselves is what makes these narratives enticing? And not to divorce them from reality. Asteroids or things have hit the Earth in the past and have certainly caused some changes and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
But from zombies to asteroids, there's always these narratives that we seem to invest in where the world comes to an end. And the question you might want to ask ourselves are, what itch do they scratch? What purpose do they serve? Individually and collectively as a community and as a society. And one of the things that and there are a couple ways to approach this, but I brought Jack Van Impe up as a sort of as an example. From a Freudian perspective, they can be the worst kind of symptom, because as long as we toy and play with the idea of the asteroid coming, it may keep us from actually acting on it. I wonder to what degree that we're so saturated with these end of the world, these dystopian sort of future things, that they generate a sort of fantasy pocket that we sort of we find ourselves lost in, and maybe we don't do anything about them. How many? Maybe we do have some sort of early warning detection system for asteroids that are coming our way, and maybe we don't. But it would be kind of sad that if that is a potential outcome of 200 asteroids coming this way, why don't we have one? Why don't we have something in place?
Some kind of system that is an early warning system. Hey,
why not?
By the way, I'm not sure how 200's a lot. First of all, and I think that's kind of scary because they usually just have the one big one that's coming.
If I can see on my phone every time somebody rings the doorbell in my house, I should be able to see a 5 mile asteroid.
Come to think,
I should be able to see.
Right, you and the Russians are watching what happens at your front door. I understand from all the hacking that's going on with those.
Well, we are getting a hurdy-gurdy from the Ukraine, and that
you've ordered something from the Ukraine. Okay, good luck with that. Well.
We got a hurdy-gurdy and a hand-launched missile. It's two things.
Interesting, because Ukraine was not a topic of conversation until the last year or so, and it seems like we can't throw a rock without hearing about the Ukraine in some way. And you ordering, okay, so. Maybe you're part of the problem here.
Maybe I should. Maybe maybe the Ukrainians are going to save us from the asteroid. I don't know what. Maybe that's what.
I like how you tied that together. It could very well be. I don't know. Well, so our fantasy about these utopian views or the zombie views, either way, I can think everything's perfect and versus the zombies are out to get us. We're trying to avoid something maybe in this, or we're trying to kind of let's get this reality is too harsh. We talked about this before, but wait, I mean,
we'll think about the reality. Like, if you want to, whenever we're taking sort of a psychoanalytic track, we often want to be able to ground any current experience. We want to be able to follow it down some sort of early developmental thread to maybe its earliest point of origin. So you could ask yourself, what is the first asteroid? What is the first doomsday scenario that we're often faced with? And if you were, again, channeling Freud,
yeah,
there is something about the move from the ease and the rhythm of the womb into the world that suddenly confronts us with a number of asteroids. And one of the things that Donald Winnicott talks about this, he was a pediatrician and psychoanalyst, and one of the first potential asteroids was something like hunger, which is probably something we didn't feel in the womb because of, we had an umbilical cord that sort of answered these
nourishment
needs.
Through the mother.
So Winnicott, he reasoned that the very first catastrophe we had to deal with was hunger. And it's a catastrophe that came from the inside. Mm-hmm. And so from that moment on, we have had to work through regulation from someone else initially to be able to do something with the feelings and the catastrophes that we're faced with. And the infant is faced with a series of catastrophes, having to deal with hunger, gravity, all these sorts of things, sights, sounds, smells. You can think that there's the potential for more than 200 asteroids to befall all of us at the moment of birth. And so we come up with, we are assisted in the solutions we come up with. We're often helpless to the solutions we're given by caregivers earlier in that point in our life.
Thank goodness.
And then we're often sort of, depending on the quality of that care, we may be cursed with the solutions that we're given.
Okay.
And even the best caregiver doesn't arrive in time before hunger finds us.
Right.
So to a degree, we've all been threatened, maybe even assailed by some sort of asteroid, a metaphorical asteroid of sorts. And so a Freudian take on this is that in some ways, every time we dance with dystopian things, art, literature that moves in that direction, or even news, it's a way of engaging once again in the very thing that we were experienced early on, and that there is something in that dance that is allows us to have some mastery over it.
Okay.
And that's also what can make it dangerous to have these sort of not only is it the boy who cried wolf, but in some respects it may be enough for us, many of us, simply to be scared by these headlines that we don't do anything else with them, if that makes any sense. There's a way
we don't do anything with them.
Right, and because we're simply using them as a way to sort of to re-experience and remaster something that's already happened, as opposed to something that's potentially in the future.
Right, like it's something at a low level too. That it's a headline in an article. I can dismiss that and not look at it and laugh at it or have another reaction, but I don't really delve into it. I don't connect it to some of the earlier traumas. So it seems to me like, and this is the theme with the Freudian ideas that you've talked about so many times, but the idea is there's something in the past that the everyday experience we have now at whatever developmental stage we're at that connects to this early past, and it's a trauma and those kind of things. So
there are always elements of our history to meet the present. We never face the present moment without these filters, not just filters, because in some ways that's the difference between perception and apperception. We engage in a way that helps create the things that arrive, and in this act of creating the moment, we are bound by the tools we bring to that moment, and those are forged in the past, and they're often unconscious. They're forged at key developmental moments. I was having a conversation with someone about just sexuality in general. And you can think of that, that is, Freud would have that begin at the very beginning, but it's certainly something that begins to arrive when people begin to hit adolescence. And you could, at every developmental period, there's a different asteroid of sorts. There is at infancy, it may be the asteroid of feeding. And then as we move into adolescence, it may be the asteroid of integrating sexuality in a way that we haven't had to before. When we hit middle-aged, I was talking to someone also this week, and we're talking about how something unique happens at middle-aged. You can't go backwards. There is no home to return to, but there's no clear future either. So what happens at middle age is you're often marooned in a way in between 2 points. And there's an asteroid there. There's something that is potentially catastrophic that we have to find some way to dance with. And some of us are lucky enough to have been given the tools early on to be able to meet that in a certain way. And we also may have a context that allows us to meet that. We've talked in here before about how all the things that we have to deal with, particularly through emotional regulation and whatnot, there is autoregulation and dyadic regulation. And we always need others to some degree.
Right.
You can think of the what's that Tom Hanks movie, the one where he had the beach ball. What's that?
No. Okay. First of all, it was Castaway. Second, it was not a beach ball. It was a volleyball.
Okay, so
Okay.
Volleyball.
Correct the record.
Okay, good.
All right.
So it's a volleyball. One of them volleyballs. You'll notice one of the first things he did was to create something he can have an interaction with. So in some ways, he sort of generated an object relations. There could be some element of dyadic regulation. There could be,
Yeah.
And so all of us, we have to be able to do that. And
I don't think we always associate it with something earlier in our life. I mean, obviously the Freudian theory and all those associated have this idea that you can trace it back to something there and connect it with what you said earlier, what's happening in the now, connecting with that. But I'm not sure that we always, average Joe on the street, we're connecting it to something. It's usually in this moment right in front of us in the here and now, as opposed to being connected. Although the theory seems to make sense that it is connected to something earlier.
Well, it's connected in the sense that the brain and the nervous system of the individual facing the present moment has a history, and our nervous system is directed and built and bound, particularly through early experiences. I mean, there's the dance between nature and nurture. As I say, that is nature through nurture. So we are the nervous system we have is dependent on the developmental seas we swim in from the very beginning, and so in that way we're bound by it. Right.
It seems like if you've had a really rough upbringing, child abuse or neglect or any of those kind of things, it's actually really going to affect you more so if you had a sort of a normal or average kind of upbringing with enough love and nurturing care. Then you have some platform to deal with these crises to come, the asteroids to come, so to speak.
And you have we've talked in here before about that guy Bion, by the way.
Yeah.
And this notion that Bion said that all change is heralded by a catastrophe, and this makes a certain sort of sense if you think it just from the idea of learning theory, that the move from the big leap of faith in learning is to have to lose something, cognitive dissonance, challenge, struggle, all these sorts of things. So there's some minor catastrophe, and every time we learn something big, something that informs us in a way and challenges the way we think about ourselves in the world, there's a catastrophe in that. And that requires a level of emotional regulation, how to be able to manage and to be able to meet suffering where you're at. All these things are important. And if you can't, you not only do you not learn, not only are you stuck, but you also may be ill-prepared when the asteroid hits.
Right. You don't have the resources necessary at that moment. You may regress. I guess that's a term that's sometimes used in this way, so that you're you don't have the resources, but you're going to try to do something to offset this trauma that's coming.
It's interesting because you mentioned the word regression, and there's a neuroscientist and neuroscientific researcher called Alan Shore, and he wants to sort of revive this notion of therapeutic regression.
Right.
Because he thinks that that's how real learning with a capital L occurs. It requires some form of helplessness. It doesn't mean you have to become a baby again.
Right.
But it's regressed in the sense that someone develops a level of dependency, a level of dysregulation, and that's what could make therapy very, very powerful and important. It's also a criticism he pulls from some of this data, and I've seen it. There's been some increasing criticism, particularly of CBT treatments and their focus mainly on cognition, even though DBT and stuff are now focusing more on emotional regulation. But they're often very short-term type treatments, and the symptom recidivism and the resurgence of symptoms, all that sort of stuff after 6 months of treatment are pretty bad. There's
Right.
no.
Okay.
Whereas longer term treatments, particularly in this case, it would be psychoanalytic ones, where there is a guided and contained, there is a generation of some level of dependency, and that this allows for the sort of changes that can be internalized, and that nervous system that's going to face the present is now changed and altered as a result of that in a way that briefer treatments may not allow it to happen.
Right.
And Shore sort of credits this notion of creating a space where regression is possible.
Regression is possible. It becomes almost a part of how to get better or work through the issue that you have. Well, it's kind of interesting that we categorize some of these things. I mean, I think and we talked about this on other shows, but there's just a flood of information and media and everything. Information is coming at us so much, and our brain is not quite ready for some of the technology and things that are happening. But the notion that we have to sort of categorize the traumas. Though 200 asteroids coming at Earth, I haven't heard much else besides this particular article, so I can dismiss that. Or maybe I'm the person that hits and they say, wow, here's the end of the world again. This time I believe it. So I don't know. How people have to sort of almost like a choice of how you respond. I don't know if that's a choice or not. What do you think?
Well, I don't. The initial affective response is not a choice.
Right.
There is a feeling that arrives. The choice may occur, and there's a real. Even this notion of free will becomes really problematic when you begin to think about it in terms of what actually happens when we appear to choose and then initiate action or behavior. There's a lot more complicated things going on in there, and so I suspect that to individuals who already have a propensity for anxiety, this article may make them more anxious. It may already fuel an obsessive ruminative element of them that they are already dwelling on the end of things.
This in this way, I just had a thought of one of our other episodes about confirmation bias, that you hear, if you're anxious, you hear something that makes you more anxious, you tend to spend more time and believe it, and those kind of things. So that could very well trigger some of that you already had in motion in some ways.
Yeah, and next thing you know, you got you're buying half a ton of peanut butter and storing it in your basement.
Right.
Yeah.
You're building the shelter, but I think if the big asteroids are coming, the shelter may not help. I don't know, but something to think about.
All I
you
gotta
buy in
say
bulk is what you're saying.
I got enough peanut butter to last me for a couple hundred years. Just saying. And I got a peanut allergy, so it's really going to be.
Well, that complicates it even more.
Really,
Not sure why you're making that purchase, but well, you got to work through that allergy so you can actually use that peanut butter.
Yeah, I had a friend tell me the only way I was ever going to get swole is due to allergies. So
Swole.
Swole, that's
Oh, okay, yeah. I'm
swole,
sorry.
Sorry.
I was thinking that was a.
It's not
somewhere between woke and swole, maybe. I don't know.
It's not a slow woke. And in fact, I didn't say it a minute ago, but I when you mentioned how our childhood affects us, you don't know if you realize this, but I was raised by a cat, And to this day, I'm only attracted to women who have 8 breasts.
Oh, that was a bit of information that we really didn't need to hear about. But there's something wrong. But I'm not sure being raised by the cat was what the problem was. Well, I don't know. There's this, like I said, there's just so much information out there, and we have this childhood that sort of led us to the personality that we are now in some ways, as we talked about, and then we have to deal with these constant threats to ourselves and to other things in a context that we're not really sure how to respond, at least in a emotional way, because maybe we don't have the ability to control that so much, but. I don't know. The issue of these news headlines and what's going on, it's almost a numbing kind of a response.
Well, you're the one that sent me this thing. So, what did it do to you? You saw this thing. What did you suddenly did you go buy the peanut butter in bulk? What did you do?
All right, here's what I do typically. I don't know, but I want to say there's a pattern here or not. But so I'm scrolling through the Twitter, which I've subscribed to a certain group of folks that send information out. Some funny and humorous, others are more newsy and hopefully helpful and educational. So the first response is, okay, look at this sensational headline. They're trying to sell papers or website advertisements or something. And then if it hits a level where I go, I wonder what's behind that, and I'll start looking in. So I'll go to the article and start reading who it's about, who said this, what's the evidence there for. I'm looking for something to sort of verify and this is being real.
You call up the Cruise and ask him if he knows anything about these asteroids.
Well, I need to. I really need to, because as we know, Sean Cruise and the Cruise has all the information about this. I mean, that's what he studies, right?
So, I think he had asteroids once too.
Oh, I don't know how to respond to that. He knows about them, but So, yeah, I want to read the article. It turns out it was on a podcast. Somebody was talking about this. This is actually the author, and I'll put the name up, but the author is a person of a scientist and looks at this anthropology, looks at all of the history and so forth. And there was some legitimate concerns that we're not prepared was the bottom line in all of this, and we need to do something. NASA has done a lot of things, and that there was a sort of a hint that there was something going on to detect these things, but prepare for. I'm not sure that's really moving very fast. So that's what I did in response to try to answer your question. Was that I dug deeper into it to see if it hit the level of something I could believe. Did it enough evidence there?
So you said, well, you went and you looked. You wanted to educate yourself. So you responded. It generated enough of an emotional experience or an affective state that at least engendered a curiosity. So you invested. You looked into it a bit more.
Yes. It's not quite all of it. Let me just add a couple more things. That there was a picture, so it was a graphic representation of these multiple asteroids just out of the Earth's atmosphere, about to hit the planet. That was the first thing. So it's a visual that I respond to at the very beginning before I read the headline. So I had to put that in there because I think that's another sensory piece that
there was a visual. There was a drawing of an asteroid about to decimate the planet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That started the whole thing. So it started with a visual, and that often happens with me. I'm kind of there's something, and what is that about? Let me read the headlines and go on. If I want to be honest, that's how it actually happened.
So there's a visual generated an experience. You were able to turn that experience into curiosity. You were able to explore it. And then at the end of this, you concluded what?
I concluded it might be a topic for us to talk about in that what's others' reaction to this? Is it like mine? Do people, like you said earlier, they just they had this anxiety already. It just adds to it. It feeds in there, and they go bonkers and start doomsday doomsday prepping of some sort, like you
Peanut
with
butter.
the peanut butter, right? And,
Giant cans of peanut butter.
or what? I mean, is it taken? Should it be just dismissed by because it's another sensational headline and it doesn't have anything to support it?
Well, and in a way, so it sounds like for you that the jury may be out. That you will continue to, if more
Right.
information shows up, then you might go out and buy the peanut butter, or
Right. Or be more concerned to a certain extent and find out what. All right, the United States, great country, got a lot of material wealth. Have we done anything?
Got a
about
lot of peanut
this?
butter.
We make peanut butter here, and not far from here, by the way. And so, are we really? What's the percentage that this thing is going to happen? And if it does cross a threshold of some sort, then do we have ways to do it? Now, in the article, it also talked about that just a little bit, that you don't want to bomb these things and blow them up like a nuclear weapon. They're going to blow things up into tiny pieces that still have the same terrible outcome and impact.
You just got lots of things hitting you.
Yeah, lots as opposed to the big one. And so they said you have to do something by the way of putting a rocket or something to land on it or get close to it to move its path out of the way, and that's a possibility. But on this one, you have to do it 200 times. So I'm still not sure, but at least it gave you that information to
Sort of move it out of the way. You just wanted to,
Yeah, all these things are in some sort of orbit, as the solar system is, in the way I think Sean talked about accretion, I believe it was, or something, the forming of planets and the solar system, that this is something that sort of spins and circles and comes together, that perhaps we can look at the path of these 200 comets or asteroids and be able to do something with all of that. I'm not sure. I'm not, like I said, the evidence gives us a little information. I'm not convinced at this point.
But notice how that, your narrative took you to this place where you're still sort of actively seeking information to determine what you may need to do with this.
Yeah.
But you can see how, in some ways, you were prepared to be able to do that. Other
Right.
individuals, maybe because of their earlier developmental asteroids, the catastrophe that they've had to face, they may come up with a different solution. Some of them may be frozen by this. They may disavow it. They may simply, we see that, I think, with a lot of, when you mention climate change and whatnot, there's sort of a individual and societal attempt at disavowal. We just ignore it, right? That's one. There's the possibility of overreaction when you mention the idea of trying to blow up the asteroids and make it worse. There are
Right.
lots of ways
Yep.
we could make this worse. Right?
Oh, well, yeah.
There could. And then there's the flight of terror. And I was sort of joking about the peanut butter, but that's also a way, in some ways, not to deal with this in the way that we possibly could. Because if it turned out that there was an asteroid coming our way that we had no control over, and there's a good chance it was going to wipe out most of the planet, then we would need to know that and be able to act accordingly.
Right.
What can we say? What could we do? We would need to be able to have the experience, become aware of it, and then do something with it, which in some ways is that those are the three stages of any sort of emotional regulation, right?
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. We have to do something with it.
And if we don't do something with it, it figuratively and literally does something to us. And whether it is the asteroids, one of the 200 heading our way, or the asteroid of Monday, or any sort of emotional event the conflict you continually have with a spouse or a significant other, each of those, there's the potential for a narrative that can move you in the place of doing something with it, or one that could move you in one of those other places. And there's the model of fight, flight, or freeze. There is the disavowal, the being paralyzed. There is the running away, active avoidance, and then there's the overreaction, right? Mm-hmm. And so we got to find, to be able to navigate those three points, we have to get to a place that you're describing, where we will use this to gather more information, right? To do.
Yeah, it does make sense, and it seems like sometimes we're overwhelmed by the emotion, and we just stay in that state of of agitation and anxiety or fear, which is a big part of this kind of headline. The fear. What are you going to do? And then it leads you to go back, and we'll full circle a little bit back to some of those movies and some of those things that we've in the books and writing and movies and media that it's going to be a terrible outcome, and we're going to see how these things are working out. It fits in with conspiracy theories as well, but then there's reasonable, rational. How should we deal with this information that we have, and what can we do? What are the possibilities? And let's choose a path and see if that helps us out. But there's all these people who just have really a lot of trouble with that emotional regulation. The systemic window, as we talked about so many times.
And sometimes they get to be president.
Okay, there you go. Knew we couldn't go far, but hey, that's all right. Things are going to happen. We're in the countdown year now for elections and that kind of thing. So maybe we'll see.
We may have a few more asteroids heading our way there. I don't know.
Lots of asteroids. Seems to be the most engaged, talked about topic too.
Asteroids or the current election or the election cycle?
Well, the way you combined both of those together, I was thinking, the impending doom or something happening here. So
it's. I don't think it's impending. I think it's pended.
It's what is it? Yeah.
What's the opposite? Of?
I don't know. It's already happened. It's there. It's there for us.
It's been pending.
Yeah. So I don't know. We just have to deal with the. I mean, this was an example of probably a million of these kinds of things from the media and the headlines trying to grab your attention. They're trying to shock you. They're trying to, frighten you. Fear seems to be a big seller in so many ways. And if you're talking about politics, that's certainly a part of what's happened there. But fear sells.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's several things to think about that. You mentioned that the notion of the euthymic window. There are ways in which we look for things that'll get us just at the top part of that euthymic window. Horror movies, news stories that are gloom and doom. There's a way in we get you a certain level of pleasure that we actively seek out those sorts of things because in a way they balance us. We want to pull ourselves up into the places of fear, a little like a roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
And so we're often looking for things that will generate those sorts of experiences for us. And that's kind of what I was meaning earlier, that there's a way we can be trapped by that sometimes this constant flow of horrible things actually drives us to inaction because it simply fulfills the purpose of maintaining some sort of balance. It doesn't trigger action. It's just we keep looking at these things and we keep, and you also mentioned this notion that, that it plays a part in politics. And oftentimes that, a political opponent will attempt to make the other opponent look more dangerous than the other.
Right.
And there's some indication that under fear, for instance, I think this was it Drew Weston who did this study, or maybe he just mentioned it, but that we will lean more conservative when we're afraid. And there's something about these broad political categories that correlate with neurological states and categories of emotional regulation. Mm-hmm. When we move into places where we're more afraid, we're going to want order, we're going to want structure, we're going to want certainty, we're going to and that pulls for more conservative ideology. Mm-hmm. If liberal ideology is much more marked by an openness to experience and things like that, those diminish when we're afraid. So you'll often see, and I think there's some research on this, particularly when it comes to Republican candidates who tend to be on the right, they tend to lean more toward, they're going to take your guns, they're going to kick in your door, people are going to come over the border and, attack your cat. There are all these sorts of things that you get, and they are a surefire way to either motivate a certain base, right, but it also may pull other people in the direction you want them to, because when they're afraid, they move in that direction.
Right, right. And it's a collective in a way, right? I mean, you move that group in there, almost sounds like we have the same ideas in this group. Sounds a little socialist to me. So
That
that's
gets some
the
people
reverse
afraid.
of everything there.
That gets some people afraid. Well, when you think about it, this notion of individuality, particularly if you look at it a more conservative way of thinking about individuality, if there's this notion of the individual versus the collective, and somehow on the left it's much more collective, and on the right it's much more. But there is a tribalism that drives conservative politics that is in some ways anti-individual.
Yeah,
We speak
that's
of
I think yeah,
nations.
that was a very very
Yeah, it's
Agreed.
not. You are free to choose to be a straight Christian who likes chicken. They're the
and guns
and guns.
And that other
Whereas and if you don't choose those things, you are outside the tribe, and that you are you could be potentially suspicious.
that makes sense to me. This binary world that we're in with the tribalism and so forth, the ones and zeros, it just seems like, and I may be hopeful about this, but I think the vast majority of people are somewhere between those two, and all we see in the media are the fringes of that continuum. So I'm hopeful about that maybe we can learn to balance these things out in some way. Well, the future will let us know about that as well.
Oh, there's not going to be a future because the asteroids are coming. So,
Oh yeah, that's
so
right.
we're
Yeah,
doomed.
it's hard to mention that, but bring that up. But I don't know. We've worked through a lot of things, but I don't think we have control over what happens in the solar system and the universe and some planet. They
Maybe
in so
DeCruz
many
does.
ways.
Maybe Sean does. If we ask this guy, he may have some answers.
Yeah, he does, as a matter of fact, in that. So, yeah, I'll defer to his expertise in all of this. But yeah, so we have to respond to this. But that's just one headline out of, as I said before, a million.
And there are probably worse headlines.
Oh, absolutely. Right. This one was, okay, kind of benign in a way that it just happened to pop up, and there was a nice picture, and I'll pull a graphic up here. But all right, it gets you thinking about it, and also it's a diversion from the day-to-day grind of all the other things that are
It goes back to
driving you crazy,
that
maybe.
euthymic window. You will seek out a certain level of stimuli because a level of excitation allows you to return to that placid normal. And you're right, there is a grind in that. We want to be scared, we want to be sad. The movies we watch do either one of those things. There's Old Yeller dies at the end. I don't hope I didn't give that away.
Oh, too
and
late. Too late.
And that's that bottom part of that euthymic window. And then we watch, some guy with a chainsaw. That's on the other end of that. And so
Right.
we gravitate, toward. And then there's some movies like that movie, The Lighthouse. It seemed to,
Yeah.
just.
I don't
Go
know what
both
you're talking
ways.
about. I've actually blocked that entire
that's-
experience out,
yeah.
so I don't know. Is that something I should see?
Should
Maybe.
see.
All right, it's up for an award. All right, we saw it win.
Hey, here's one of the this would be a takeaway from this.
All right.
I think the way to think about this is that we shouldn't just look to the sky for asteroids. We should look for the ones that are arriving on Monday morning when we wake up. We should look for all the things that dysregulate us with the potential for being able to be changed by them. We often are not in ways that we should.
Right.
And so our capacity for that to accept and to become aware and then do something with those things we feel, those steps could be necessary. So my worry isn't as much because if there are asteroids coming, it'll depend on our ability to be able to do something with the feelings that their shadows give, because by the time they hit, it's too late.
Right.
And that requires our ability to do something with our feelings. And I think again and again and again, that's something that we need to work on.
I'm with you on that. I don't think we spend enough time processing and really the self-reflection and, weighing things as opposed to just taking an opinion and being in the group maybe, and it feels good to be in the group and everybody seems to think alike. That's not true, but you conjure that up. And so maybe it's this deliberation and questioning things a little bit. Maybe some critical thinking in there might be helpful.
Maybe critical thinking, critical feeling. I think that's important.
Okay.
Also,
All right.
the other thing is to think about too. There's something that we got to discuss before we go.
All right.
My favorite band in the world.
Yes.
Their new album came out last night.
Okay.
Wire, and the name of the band is Wire, and the album is Hive Mind.
Hive
And let me just say,
all right.
you got
all right.
to listen to this thing. These guys have been
Okay.
together since technically '76. Their first album came out in '77, and
Wow.
one of the reviews I read, they've never made a bad album. And I think you know,
Well,
they've only made two. But
okay.
no.
no.
That's,
Well, you know, how does this happen? That this is the band you love, and I know you've talked about them. You've been to their concerts. You can't wait.
I'm going to
till
be
the
seeing
next
them in
one.
March.
Yeah, I knew
March.
that was happening. And so here's the thing: why aren't they known more widely? I mean,
Here's the thing.
what's going on here?
There was a famous saying, I think it was Grail Marcus said that when the Velvet Underground released their first album, 500 copies were sold, but everybody who bought one formed a band. Wire are tremendously influential. If you listen
Okay.
to the band, REM were influenced by Wire. Lots of new wave bands. David Bowie took some Wireisms with him. Their first album, Pink Flag, is usually, when people list the top 50 rock albums of all time, it's usually in there somewhere.
okay.
So
All right.
they're a band that, and I think probably why they wouldn't be known is they're too odd
Okay.
and they're too arty and weird
Yep.
to really be mass consumed.
Okay.
So people
All
get
right.
they take elements. In fact, there's even a thing called if you'll listen to reviews, particularly of indie bands, they'll often say, "Well, this band sounds like Wire," or "This is a wiry." So
Right.
that there's even like a genre. They become like how certain directors, like if it's Fellini-esque, or all that sort of
Right.
or Spielberg-esque, whatever. They've become an adjective.
Yes.
So
yes,
you're right.
do.
They don't have mass consumption, but they've managed to find a way to embed themselves into our discourse. They've changed the course of the symbolic order in their own way, and that in of itself is an achievement, I think.
All right, my friend. You are definitely a fan. So, yeah, and people listen to this. Hey, go listen to Wire. Go pick up the
Hive Mind. It's good. It's good.
Hive Mind. It's not an album, is it?
It's an
Do they
al-
still call it albums in these days and
Well,
times?
you
I mean, the
now that vinyl
thing.
is back,
Vinyl is back.
so
that is true.
you can buy an album. I unfortunately was streaming it last night before I went to bed, and and so
Okay, it's good to hear that
if
you've
the
made that
cold-
move up there to
the-
streaming. All right,
Well, if
good.
the cold doesn't kill me, I'll
Yes.
listen to it again today. But I'm probably after this going to go crawl into a ball and take a nap. Telling you.
Sounds like a good thing to do. And listen, you need to take care of yourself because this cold is an asteroid coming for you.
Yeah, this is an
so do
asteroid,
something
all right.
with that. All right, final words. What else is going on? Anything else we need to know? Oh, you're doing a talk coming up.
I am.
I'm real interested in that. There's a group that's actually going to form and sit in a room and listen to you.
There is.
So this is going to be fun. All right, give us a little bit of the topic and where
It's
are you
on
going to
ethics.
go with this thing?
It's at St. Simon's House. I'll be giving a talk on ethics.
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 Okay, my friend, I know you very well, and somebody needs to be there to help you figure out what the ethics really are before you say
that's
something unethical.
That's
okay,
a little
I'm
like
just saying.
a Catholic priest doing a talk on sex. Really?
Oh,
it's kind of like
do we
the
have
same
to?
thing. It's
Do
like
we
this,
have to go there?
He's probably heard of ethics and seen pictures, but maybe not really ever engaged in any.
I'm hoping it goes well, and how are you doing, sir?
Doing good.
All right, I'm glad to have you here in the studio. We've kicked off this thing. We've got everything. If I can check around, everything is actually in the red and it's rolling. So, welcome to the studio. What's on your mind today, my friend?
Well, we had talked a lot about the whole idea that the new digital world has all this promise. It's the new industrial revolution. And then there are all these other concepts. You referred to some earlier today where we talked about the whole idea that, well, artificial intelligence is coming. It's going to be to the level to where it takes away every human job. Humans will be left without jobs, and I think there's a book by Harari that makes that point, that ultimately there'll be an elite that runs technology, and that everyone else will just be sitting there and living off the government dole. That's sort of some of the conventional wisdom that's out there. So ultimately, is it true? And I'm asking your thoughts on this because you're the big technology guy and do all the.
Sorry about that. Go ahead.
So is it in fact true that that technology has achieved all this promise and has radically altered our life in a way that's increased our productivity?
Well, now you just sent me a loaded question over here, and I saw all of the different things that you just threw into that question to make it more complicated. Because is technology moving and changing our environment? Yes. Are robots taking our jobs? Yes. As a matter of fact, if you go in the manufacturing warehouses these days, you don't see immigrants working. You see robots working.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody had called them immigrant robots.
Mm-hmm.
They've come in with the sort of political climate there. They've come in, and that's where do the people go? So that's a serious problem. So in a way, the technology is actually canceling out some of our gains. The progress in moving toward that is going to make life better. Yeah, it is going to make life better. It has already. It's made it more complicated. I'm no expert at this. I can only tell you from personal experience and things I've come across. But the technology can be a double-edged sword. It can be a friend or foe.
Yeah.
And I think the promises is part of the problem. Now, so this is a part of your question. We're going to rewind that question and look at it later maybe. But it was like I said, it was a loaded question. But there's a piece of it that these are promises. Hey, your life's going to be easier.
That's right.
Well, wait a second. What? And be specific about that. You're going to have a flying car. Remember that one.
Right.
I think we're going to talk more about that whole idea.
Yeah.
Title of an article, which I think you've said and I think I've said at some point, where's my flying car? Because I was promised that when this technology thing took off.
Yeah, or just the driverless car, which right now is fraught with all kinds of difficulties. And the big proponents of this have had to walk back their projections because these driverless cars keep doing things, and this driverless technology keeps ultimately killing people, even though probably they're a lot safer than human beings driving the cars. You know, the idea, I guess, is that, well, you know, if I get in a driverless car and then it wrecks, I don't have any control. So folks have that in the back of their mind, the whole "I don't control it" concept.
Right. Yeah, and it will be a real process of change, and I think you're right. Some of these people have, Elon Musk comes to mind, that have put these real short-term goals where everybody's going to be in a car like that or something. And I think they do that on purpose. I think there's some kind of strategy behind the crazy talk in a way. I do believe that, and that's something we can talk about more too on many subjects. But the proponents push it out beyond what is the manufacturing and technology is capable of to kind of get the word out, and then they will move the goalpost back a little bit, and they'll meet it in the future. There seems to be a strategy.
At what point is it overpromising, and where is that line between that and a good marketing hyperbole? Because we all say our product's the best product.
It's an interesting question, I think, and whether or not that people will project this out in a marketing strategy and put a deadline out there that's way too soon for this to develop and us to get the information. However, you know, in the idea of driverless cars you're talking about, they have so much data now that's coming back to them to make some decisions with. And I think in a way that's how technology works. It provides analytics. It provides data that you can then begin to measure and make changes in the product and make things better. Mm-hmm. So that I think is good. But back to your loaded question, yes, almost everything new comes out of the chute. You got the early adopters, you've got hype, you've got trends, you've got people kind of reacting in different ways, good and bad. And then eventually, as progress moves along, things settle out. We get more accurate picture of what's happened. So, unfortunately, Tom, you do not have a flying car that comes out of a suitcase like on the Jetsons. So I'm sorry about that.
My worry is that the whole idea that really what the business is in the United States is a software business. The majority of venture capitalism goes to 3 or 4 cities, and it goes all into software. Ultimately, what is being produced in the United States, because all the manufacturing's done overseas. Now, that may change as these other countries become more affluent, and then we may end up with manufacturing back here. But
I'm not sure all, but a lot. Yes, definitely.
Well, look at Columbus. I mean, what fed Columbus for years is gone, and essentially the jobs here are all in information. And as a college official, I always touted that. But in the back of my mind, I always worry if there's not a finished product that we can take to market and sell. It's kind of hard to sell concepts, and it doesn't create jobs for everyone. In other words, those folks who are in the information software business are going to have game in that area. So what happens to the rest of folks? That's a Harari idea that, well, they won't have anything to do. There won't be anything for them to do.
Yeah, there's almost a digital divide, if you will. Lots of divides we're having to do with people have and have nots, kind of those kind of things. You're right about the big cities having that technology and sort of centered there. I think not long ago there was some, just a few months ago, I think it was Amazon who was trying to locate their new headquarters they didn't choose a smaller rural type setting, which they could have.
Right.
And they went to the big mega metropolises that we have around. And so as long as that continues, it's going to be, perilous kind of journey, because we're going to have that divide. And if some folks don't have an opportunity, then we're going to have a real problem. It should be that everybody has an opportunity, but hey, that's another concept too. Make your own way. This is America. Pull yourself up by the bootstraps. Everybody's can be president or whatever. Those kind of things still are in people's minds. So it may be a boomer idea, but on the other hand, how should technology go? Should people have access? Should people have the opportunity to build? So you've got that going on with what you also just said, which was the idea of being centered in one location, and then another person who's not in that location doesn't have the opportunities in that. Where does it go from there? That's kind of the question. How do we, let me just say this. Part of the issue has been that technology came on. Jeff Conklin talks about this. It came on before we were ready. Mm-hmm. We didn't know what to do with it. Here's this shiny new toy that's going to make everything wonderful, but we hadn't processed what it's like. How would it affect our lives? What do we really want out of technology? So these things move fast in that way. We're all of a sudden having to catch up, and there's a book coming out. I forget the author's name. Sorry, but the title is "The Future Is Faster Than You Think."
Right.
At this end of this month.
Yeah.
And this guy the author describes just how we're not ready and what we need to do about that. And I think that's going to be a big question.
Well, it's sort of hard to predict how things are going too. So we're operating in a vacuum in a sense that we don't have the data to really understand what the consequences of all these things that are happening now. And I think that's true throughout history. If Kurt Vonnegut was going to write this whole scenario, he would go back and say, well, if technology takes all the jobs, then in his story, I would think there would be something like a grassroots revolution, and the government would have to tell technology to take a hike, and we're going to go back to manufacturing and manipulate all that,
Right, I think. And, the idea, too, and somebody said this just the other day, and it just kind of hit me like a brick, but 2/3 of Americans have a high school education.
Right.
Only 1/3 have beyond high school. That doesn't prepare you to work on at these levels that require so much math and the kind of computer skills and all of the service skills that we have in this industry now and have in the world, in our society, certainly, and others. You're not prepared for them, so you have to do that. You've talked about education a lot and trying to get out, and you did some work in what is at CSU to try to reach out to those who typically don't have an opportunity to come to college and all that. That was a big issue and an important one. It just seems like all these boats have to rise at the same time, and I don't know.
Well, here's
I don't
the
know
other
what to make
thing.
of
What
it.
are we teaching in college? So if ultimately everything's going to go the technological direction, shouldn't university higher ed be basically about coding and computer science and technological? Certainly have the math and science and that kind of thing, but
Right.
all these other things we teach in college, should we just sort of forget about that? Because really, ultimately, it doesn't prepare you either. And the same thing's true in public schools. We have this huge canon of things we teach because we have this American ethos where you're building the better citizen, the voter, and everything. But now, are we in a new age, or their new set of skills? For a while, the buzzword, everybody was studying critical thinking and soft skills. That was going to be the new thing.
Right.
But
right.
now I think we're off that too. So I'm not sure where we're headed with
It
that.
really is hard to know, but it just keeps moving.
Yeah.
And if this the technology sector moves faster than everything else, all the other sectors, then we haven't figured this out yet. But I want to reframe it in some ways because I want to see this in a positive way. That's kind of my take on it. Most things, but this is an exciting challenge. So what are you going to do with it?
Mm-hmm.
You can frame it in different ways, but listen, we enjoy our phones and we're all, connected to the grid and we're doing these things and we feel like we're smarter now, maybe, or we have more access to information. This dissemination of this conversation, for example, we're doing a lot of things now that we've never been able to do before. So I want to say this might be the opportunity if we can manage this right and not shoot ourselves in the foot. And make something out of this revolution. And yes, it's going to be gains and, backpedaling and moving forward, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and all those kind of things. But I want to see this in a positive way. I'm that kind of guy that we can work through problems. And we're in a country that work through a lot of problems. So why not this? And how do we make it better?
Do you see it as an issue that the ubiquity of some of these technologies has, in a way, made us disconnected from each other?
Yeah, I think. Yes, we've had a similar conversation around that question. We need more work with it to try to answer and get a good answer with it, because I think there are always losses with these gains. It's never a total. On the positive side, on the black side instead of the red, if you're looking at accounting. But the notion is that we do have to manufacture things. We have to make things.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to do the plumbing and the electrical and the building. And
right.
We're making things, right?
Yeah.
So we have to have that in our world. We have to have a balance with this service industry where everything's on a screen in front of us and you need to know software and programming and coding and things like that. Well, that's just another piece of the puzzle. It's not everything, and it shouldn't be. We've got to adopt some basic skills that we talked about in here a lot, and that is accommodation, empathy, being who you are, being authentic, appreciating other people and all that. Those counseling things you hear me talk about occasionally, but that needs to be involved in this whole process, so that we look at what our values are and those things that are of value to us, and we can go ahead and project out to a point, at least to a certain extent, of where we want to be. We got some vital questions to answer before we get to that. But I think we need to pose that question. Where do we want to go with all this? Where do we want to end up? It's kind of like retirement. That's something you and I both can talk about.
Yeah.
But what you want retirement to be, well, retirement is ongoing.
I don't think we've ever really intentionally asked those questions. As you say, the future is whatever the title of the book is. The future is here now.
Yeah, the future's
it's
faster
than you think, or whatever.
I don't know about that.
So here's the present. It's Thanksgiving. All the family comes over. They're the grandchildren. There's mom and dad around the table. There's the grandparents around the table. The grandchildren all have their phones or pads out.
Right.
And they're watching videos.
Right.
The parents are checking their email and checking to see if we're going to put the next picture from Thanksgiving up on Facebook. And then there's grandpa and grandma, and they're checking their Instagram accounts or Twitter
all right.
accounts.
Some pretty progressive grandpas. Well, I think that's true. That's
so what's happened
really
to Thanksgiving? What's happened to family time and that kind of thing? And
you feel like, hey, I'm going to text you past the cranberry sauce.
Well, it goes to the point of what we talked about 20 years ago when people would be in the next office and email you rather than talk through the door. That was one of our friends used to say, just come in and tell me. Don't email
That's
me.
Right.
But the other thing is this. So, all the data that we have collected about instruction and education shows that the efficacy of digital instruction, online instruction, which is where it was all headed about the time I retired.
Right.
It was hard to teach in person. You couldn't find a class to teach them. Nobody wanted to take an in-person class. So all the data was showing, hey, it's as effective or more effective. But I'm always suspicious of the whole data thing. As a educator from public schools, I always wanted to ask, well, what data are we collecting? And is it really telling us what we need to know to make for a better life?
And how is it interpreted? That's a big point of it. So there's data, but then what do you do with it? What do you make of that, and how you apply it in the situation?
Well, and the ironic thing was I was an early adopter of online instruction. I was one of the very early ones at Columbus State. And
I actually have a video of you years ago on a green screen in the old studio where you were talking about that. And I saw that not long ago. So we have some archives here that can track back. And when you say I did that, hey, I've got evidence you did that, by the way. So cool.
So I was an early adopter. I thought this stuff was cool. It was fun to work with. I loved building websites and all that stuff. But as I did that, I always saw that as a side of what my real job was, which was to create new streams of knowledge as a researcher, and to go into the classroom and connect with students and do that and help people be better leaders. And now I wonder, are we going to look back and say, we really dropped the ball, but all the data we were collecting told us this was all good, but maybe we didn't collect the right data, because now we have all these unanticipated consequences. People disconnected, two poles look at things politically. Now that you have everything out there on the internet, people look at the news and they go to the sites that reinforces what they already think. And there's no listening to anybody else. So
see the show on confirmation bias. Just a plug there. There you go.
Well, I was watching the whole latest impeachment news and all that, and depending on which channel you watch,
that's exactly right.
Nancy Pelosi is either a great American hero or the worst,
or the worst person ever.
Yeah.
I mean, how does this work? And there's that now underlying that, I think, is a real problem too. And I don't mean to kind of you'd go to that point as you need, but it made me think that we've got these corporations, like you said, they're in these big cities. That's where the tech giants are, Silicon Valley, New York, all those places, that are making themselves wealthy.
Right.
Okay?
Sure.
That's what we're doing. We're in this...
Which is the American way, right?
That is the American
Right.
way, and
Yeah.
we're going to get rich. And Jeff Bezos, we have that picture somewhere around the studio where he's sitting at a small desk and a big CRT monitor with a paper banner up that says Amazon.com.
Right.
Well, now, so that's a problem when we don't understand some of the humanity
Right.
that should underlie this, because otherwise it comes across as greed, and I'm a little concerned about that being sort of our goal in the end, because that's not a really good goal from my point of view, and we talk about that. But the idea that you can come along and be prosperous and make something of yourself and make a contribution to the world and even have a lot of money, that's fine. Wait a minute, it's going up now. It's just exploding to the point that it's impossible for people to get ahead, and it's really, really easy for others to get ahead. And there's something wrong with that system. I'm not sure how to articulate that very well.
And really understand, I'm not down on technology. I'm just wondering if we're utilizing technology to meet the needs of humanity that exist right now. And
Right.
to that point, here's the things I constantly sort of think about as existential threats. One is the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, which is a technological issue. How do we come to terms with that? But the other one, even more and seemingly even more pressing, is the whole idea of global climate change. And could we, as a global society, take a look at how do we utilize science and technology to replace the present technologies that essentially global climate change is being caused by, the whole idea of creating energy, and
Right.
you need more and more energy, and
Right.
you have more and more people, and that's been good to us. But now, how do we transform those things into new kinds of energy producing entities that don't impact the climate so drastically?
Right.
And those could create jobs too. So I think that may be potentially a goal for us. I wish that governments would promote those kinds of things instead of argue about whether it's happening,
Right. It almost seems like
Yeah.
some of this is being talked about on the sidelines, but for me, that's the key point. The thing you just said is that we need to make that direction change with technology that can capture carbon out of the atmosphere,
Right.
and make that we talked about solar energy and
Right.
solar powered. I mean, Peggy, my wife, wants our house to be solar run.
Yeah.
She wants those panels up and
Right.
and all those things. She's talked about it for a long time. So is other people. So I think really that there's an opportunity, and it may just be a generational issue. That maybe our generation, as we come along, we did a lot of good things, but we need to hand this off to people and the new technologies. And and I'm taking a developmental look here, and maybe a hopeful one too, but the idea that this new innovation, this new approach, not just to getting a chip that's faster and can compute faster, but that actually is aimed at something that we really need to address. And if that happens, we may not see it, but it's going to be a good thing, maybe.
Do you know, maybe it's a new perspective for me too, because for so many years I was tied up with doing administrative work and earning a living and raising kids and that kind of thing.
What you have to do, right?
And I didn't really, in a lot of ways, see the big picture. I saw a picture as it related to the entities where I was working,
Right.
and tried to address the issues that I saw coming down the pike, and I tried to be futures oriented too.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to me that the whole that since I've retired, I see the world in an entirely different way. I see it more in the sense of, well, what will be happening in 50 years? Now, I won't be here.
Right.
So I'm not sure why that's happened, but I've become this sort of neo-progressive that says, hey, we don't have our eye on the ball that's coming at us down the plate. Now, it may be that the future is coming faster than we think, but maybe the future's not what we think. In other words, we may be distracted by all the play pretties and coolie deals, and we may be missing the fact that Venice is underwater. I mean, Venice is currently underwater, and it's almost like we go, well, yeah, that's terrible for them, but what happens when it's Miami? Which, incidentally,
by the way, some of the streets are flooding there.
They are flooding in Miami, and my thought is ultimately on that deal. I wrote an article years ago, and it was about technology. It was about what a Wechselblatt disaster is.
Okay.
The idea is that you develop a technology, and the very technology you develop makes the problem you have worse.
Oh.
The example I used, there were a lot of examples, but the example I used was Katrina. The very, very technologies that were supposed to keep the water out kept the water in, right? So it created a Wechselblatt disaster. Well, now, my worry is, certainly over the next 20, 30 years, we can keep water out of New Orleans, but what happens when the ocean continues to rise? And that kind of thing. And whether it is that coal burning industries or cars or whatever are creating this or not, the point is it's happening. So what are we going to do about it? And that discussion, rather than needs to be more goals oriented, I guess. That's the neo-progressive in me.
No, I like it, and I like what you said too, because it fits with. When I was in graduate school, I had to take a course, and I didn't know much about it, but it was called adult development.
Yeah.
And this was psychology courses and counseling, that kind of thing. But the idea was, hey, first of all, there is adult development. You just don't get to age 21 and then you stop and you got the rest of your life.
So we're not washed up.
No, we're not. We're not. Definitely not. And the idea, too, I think, is that we're constantly – and they're talking about stages, and I wanted to mention this. This is something you said, that when you retired, now you can begin to see. Well, it's almost in a way unfortunate that we have to wait till after the job cycle and we're in retirement to look at the whole of the picture that we are involved in. And I'm hoping with this, again, but the intellectual and the digital revolution that we're in is going to inform people earlier in that development so that they make better choices, both individually and both as companies and corporations, to be able to address some of these things and see what's important. Money is one thing. We all want to make money, but hey, there's some things that are more important than that, sorry to say.
Well, certainly that promise is there. This whole idea of looking for the ball coming out of the pitcher's hand. This whole kind of metaphor I was working around. I think if I had the last 20 years to do over again.
Right. Oh boy, that's a big one right there.
I would spend a good bit more time, especially in a leadership role, leading people to have the discussion, what should we be doing, rather than the discussion being about, well, what is University of Georgia doing? What is
this mandate that we've been handed down to fulfill, and without any really a discussion about it at all?
Yeah, because really, ultimately, all these things are happening around us, but we almost are looking to the past to drive what we're doing. We want to be today's. Let's say in education, we want to be today's Harvard or the Southern Harvard. Well, the ultimate question is, what's coming down the pike? What's coming out of the pitcher's hand? What should I swing at? What shouldn't I swing at?
Right.
And
good
I don't
baseball
think,
analogy there.
I don't think as a leader I did that enough. I think what I did more was say, what problems are we having now? Okay, we pulled the people together. We threw things on the table. We got a lot of feedback, but it was about it was almost like addressing what's right there in front of us and not looking to the future, whereas ultimately the role of leadership should be to be a little more futures oriented. So
I kind of think that we find ourselves where we're working in a corporation or university, as we did in other kinds of organizations, that you sort of encapsulated in that environment. You're breathing the air.
Point.
You're
Yeah.
seeing it from that perspective, and you're sort of have some blinders on to what's going out there, because you've got to take care of your own, and so to speak. You've got a job to do. Your boss is asking you to do these tasks. You're doing that task. You're not saying, hey, does this fit into my philosophy of what we should be doing in this environment? No, you don't have that luxury. You're in that corral, and that's what you have to work with. So the big questions at that point don't seem to be very important to the people around you or the organization that you're in.
Well, and
it's
you're
kind
in
of interesting.
You're in a routine, so this is year 5 of your credit,
and it's comfortable.
Yeah,
routines are comfortable.
well, and you're in year 5, let's say, and it's of your accreditation. Well, you got to start working on that report. Then you also know you have a budget.
Don't remind me.
And you're
But,
going to send in the budget that you essentially sent in last year, tweaked for whether you have more or less money coming down the pike projected.
Right. Yeah.
So you know you're going to do that. You know you're going to have your regular monthly meetings, and you need to prepare for that so you don't look silly or unprepared. And you're doing all that.
Right.
But it's
You
not
can't.
doing what you want to be doing, which is saying, okay, gang, here's the future, and it's coming faster than you think. Let's talk about what it might look like and come up with some alternatives that we might try to see if this takes us in the right direction. And that's really, I think, I'm working with Bridget Markwood, who I worked with on some projects at Columbus State University. We're talking a lot about what does education need to be down the road. And a lot of what we've come up with is what we're doing is really what we've been doing. And we've been doing it for years
Right.
and years and years. And we don't even have defined what we think education should be doing.
Right,
So we
right.
just keep doing what
Well,
we
you're
have
on
been
that
doing.
treadmill and you're starting to run,
Right.
and that's what you do, and that's what you know, and so
Yeah.
you get back on that treadmill, keep rolling with what you've done before, and you're going to do that
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's a challenge. But I have to say one thing I like about what you've done in the past that was significant for me as a faculty member when you were department chair, and you had us read books and come into a faculty meeting instead of going over various technologies or something we had to do for the chancellor or something, but that we had to think, we had to read,
Yeah.
think, and then discuss things. And I always thought that was great when you
Went
you
over
did
like
that.
a lead balloon with some folks.
Well, I
it
tell
was
you
like,
what, they didn't. They should have rethought that, because
It was
actually
like
it
I
was great.
finished graduate school. What is this about? And,
Hey, no
you
more
know,
learning here. What are you
Yeah,
talking
right,
about?
Yeah, I'll
No.
bring the book in to the meeting and show it. But I don't know if
Well, I have to admit, I had a lot of those little sticky notes sticking out of the page, so you would know that I've actually looked at the book. But for me, you're right. We don't have in those systems. There's not a time, and maybe that's different in some corporations and some settings where you do have the time to think about the big issues. I like to think that they're doing that at these Google and Amazon and all these big places. They're actually thinking about the impact, in particular like Facebook now, the whole political thing where
Zuckerberg got really burned by some things that had happened. Yeah.
Wow, there's some real concerns here, because
Yeah.
one that came up for me was this idea of free speech, which we want to have free speech, but what about paid speech?
Yeah.
I mean, free and
Yeah,
paid.
yeah.
That's a difference between that, and they're not really seeing that difference right now in Facebook, and that's why I think all these hackers who are coming in and these millions of accounts that
Right,
come with
right.
the .ru on the back of it, and are on the money that's being moved, can influence people in ways that is it's against their own best interest in some situations. So that's maybe for a discussion for another day. We'll have to do the whole Facebook discussion maybe, because there's a lot there. But the point being that it connects to this idea of us not really thinking through, planning, setting the goals, and is this good for us, and how will it affect the future? And it's just a shame that it has to take two old retired guys to come in and talk about this. When wouldn't it be better if we did that in our 30s?
No,
man,
man,
starting a job. Come on,
we're old guys. It's our job now to sit in a Burger King and talk about how it could be better, right?
Yeah, you know, that's actually true. If you look at the adult development literature, that's exactly where we're at. We're at this stage of life where we're kind of looking at our accomplishments and what we would have done better and changed things. And I think that's actually is part of the series of life, those stages that we go through.
Well, you talked about being optimistic, and I'm an optimist too, and I do see a lot of evidence that the people in the Silicon sector are really trying to utilize some of those resources to really address some of these issues we're talking about. At the same time, you realize, well, we're a capitalist economy, and
yes,
really you got to ultimately be about making money and earning a living too. So somewhere in the middle is a balance. But
yeah, it may not have the luxury at those early stages to do that because we're trying to make a living and provide for the family.
But it takes a lot of creativity to say, okay, well, how can we be aware of where we are globally and use that awareness to create jobs and create money and to create a good economy for everybody. And
right.
that's a balance, because like anyone else, I think those guys are having a tendency to look at, well, what's worked before. You know, when somebody says we don't need to reinvent the wheel, I've heard that my whole life.
I've said it probably.
My question is, why don't we need to reinvent the wheel? Isn't there something better? Do we actually need to touch the ground? So I think there's room for creativity there, right?
I like it. Yeah, we just watched too many Star Wars movies around here.
That's right.
That's right. Yeah, those little gliders are always above the ground, right?
Yeah.
Well, this has been interesting. I really think that what happens in the processing of our conversation happens for me is that I've got a couple ideas I want to kind of get out there a little bit, but I'm also very intensely listening to what you have to say so that this conversation begins to kind of go back and forth, and it almost in a way pushes us toward something we haven't thought about,
right.
and something new.
Yeah.
So the discussions are valuable in that way, and I do appreciate that, and I just want to make a process comment about that. But for the most part, how much influence can we have on these things?
Yeah.
We can certainly have control and influence on our lives and our immediate situation, but not always affecting the bigger picture. And that's
right.
That's one of Dr. Dan Rose's ideas, that we can do our little part, but we need this bigger collective to make some changes for that. So, well, my response was we have to start somewhere. So
that's true. Yeah.
Let's kind of get that going. All right, sir. Well, what else is going on? Final words on this idea of technology, and are we making good decisions for ourselves, and the promises of technology that didn't quite come to pass? Your suitcase flying car.
Yeah.
I'm sorry you didn't get that.
Well, I think ultimately it's not that the promise hadn't come to pass, it's that we're not there yet, but
right.
that at least we're having these discussions and these thoughts, and someone is going to make some huge discovery that's going to create that Thomas Kuhn leap,
right.
the paradigm shift,
Absolutely.
the jump in, we all know when we look at statistics, we see curves and then we see leaps, and that's
right.
That's a common phenomenon. We don't talk about it a lot. We act as if there's a curving trajectory always up, but typically it's
it spikes up.
There are spikes up and down, and there are plateaus, but then there are sudden leaps. I think that's going to happen. And we have a tendency also to look back at the past and we're able to, in retrospect, see
always.
those leaps. And we were a part of those, but we're not seeing what's happening now. So it's that's just human nature.
No,
right?
but I mean that's a big point, because just look at how much information we have at our disposal on our phones, bombarded with information and content that we're not able to process so much. And we've had this discussion as well. Need to get Jeff Conklin in here for this one, but the idea is that it's creep in a way. This information availability now that we have from all of these different sources are we're just accepting. But if you look back 10, 15, 20 years ago, we didn't have any of this available to us. Now, if something happens around the globe, we know about it.
Right.
And the ability to evaluate it, to talk about it, to share it, to make some sense out of it. We've never had that before as we have now. And that's going to continue to move. And I think it's going to force us to make those choices that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, and Faulkner talked about this years and years ago about people tended to be pessimistic at the time of his Nobel speech with the proliferation of nuclear weapons and the two world wars and all those things. And Faulkner said, he really was sort of optimistic about where the future would go because he believed in the human spirit. And it's funny, a lot of times folks see his work as sort of not dark but depressing sometimes, because he was really cognizant of the human condition.
Right.
But at the same time, there's always that room for redemption. So I sort of a fan of the Faulknerian point of view on all that. So I guess that would be my final word on where we were today.
All right, so we went with Faulkner. We started out with Derek Thompson talking about Where's My Flying Car?
Where's My Flying Car?
From
Good
the Atlantic,
article.
a great article.
Very thought-provoking. Don't know if I drink all the Kool-Aid.
There we go.
Good stuff,
You're good. I'm glad you're not drinking all that Kool-Aid. A couple sips here and there, I think we'll be fine with it. Well, Tom, it's been a pleasure, and I tell you what, we'll do this again, and I'll see you next time.
See you next time, Mike.
And welcome to Got Therapy, everyone. So here we go.
It's a little crowded in here, though.
It's a little.
It's like a group session, huh?
Yeah, there's.
Well, we don't know where this is going, but I just
can we change the name to Got Group? That's it's Got Group Therapy.
Maybe after this, Need Therapy. It's
Yeah.
really
This is Pod Gang. This is a gang podcast, I think, of some sort.
It is.
So everybody doing okay?
Doing good.
Are we doing
Yeah,
all right?
we're good.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
I tell you what, I ate my weight in fruitcake.
Nice.
Do people still give fruitcake?
I've got. That's all we eat on the holidays. We're a fruitcake family. My
Yeah,
extended
you are.
family. It's a lot of nothing but fruitcake.
Really?
That's just fruitcake.
Wonderful.
Man. So I have no idea about this, but I had it was sneaky of me to invite people in and not tell them what was up with anything. So
We were hoping for gang members. You kept
whenever,
saying
I
gangs.
told him as a gang we're going to have a gang
We give them
podcast,
signs.
and this is kind of a gang, So maybe that's what it is.
And my thought was, why should this be different from any other podcast?
Any other-
I mean, I never know what we're going to do or what we're going to say, and so
And then an hour later, we still don't.
We still don't know what happened. What just happened.
We've
Exactly.
killed an hour somehow. We've done that.
I hope
much.
at some point I say some things I hope my mom doesn't hear.
Yeah,
That's almost every.
That's a
every
guarantee.
week, yeah.
That's guaranteed.
Yeah, we're real fortunate to have Dr. Conklin in today.
Hi,
He's,
Dr. Conklin.
He's refereeing this match, and
Is he executive producer? He's in the producer's chair.
no, he cannot produce.
No,
no.
He's
He's
the
a,
equipment.
he's a radio voiceover guy.
He can't
Yeah,
produce.
that's
Is that a reference to some sort of disorder? Maybe something's not working?
You see, I wanted other people to experience what I experience on a
Every
weekly
week,
basis.
yes, indeed.
So
Yeah.
that,
You could get a,
people get a
that
taste
checked
of
out.
this.
I think my
How
hand's
well,
stuck to the table.
yeah. Dr. Hackett, how are you, sir?
I'm good.
How was your Christmas? How was
It was
everything?
quiet, very
Oh,
quiet. We
was it?
just kind of sat
Excellent,
back and
actually, in my view.
we had Christmas early, had the kids in, and then kind of just sat around with one family group for Christmas. So it
yeah,
was
that's
kinda
right.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because you
nice.
guys had to celebrate a few things a little early to get everybody on the schedule and get everybody in one place.
It's
right?
just tough. It's tough getting them all together, but we got to see just about everybody.
Okay. All right. That's it.
Very cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Big family
the
out there.
New Year's thing's going to be happening. We're going to have all the grandkids over. So
Oh,
we're
okay.
already. That's going to happen New Year's Day. So we're planning on
All
that.
right.
coming over for
Well, yeah, yeah.
How many
Dr.
grand-
Rose will be there.
Yeah, well, that's good. He can help. He can help sit and
Give him a
watch.
chore.
How many grandchildren are we talking?
Well, it'll be. Let's see. Thomas and Laney and Kennedy will be there, and then if Kai makes the scene, that's 4 of them. And then we've got another one on the way.
Beautiful. Good.
Sorry to make some adjustments there.
So somebody's in.
Oh, another on the way, too.
Yeah, well,
Somebody
so,
somebody
yeah,
does not
yeah,
have.
yeah.
Somebody is fecund, as they
Yeah,
say.
that's right.
There-
Having
there
plenty
is-
plenty of production in the Hackett clan for
There is
sure.
fecundity.
well,
in
that's really exciting. So
Yeah.
New Year's Eve, New Year's Day.
New Year's Day, I think.
Okay.
They're going
All
to
right.
celebrate New Year's Eve at the house, and then everybody's going to make the scene. And if we have some good weather, we'll do some fishing and camping. and
It's hard to
stuff
know
like
what
that.
this weather's going to be.
Yeah.
Dr. Rose, how are you, sir?
Not too bad. Yeah, we
All
had
right, that sounds good. What happened?
we had a little controversy over the Christmas break.
Oh.
Our family often we do this where we each of us make our own version of the nativity scene.
Right.
And my son made some folks upset when he made a nativity scene out of potted meat.
Oh,
Apparently a Jesus baby out of
Potted meat.
deviled ham.
Deviled
was-
ham. That would be
Really,
wrong.
Appropriate.
That would
really
be-
bothered some people. So
Oh my goodness,
Yeah, it's
Jeff!
not-
I don't know how you respond to that.
You
but,
can't respond to
You
that.
can't
No.
respond to
Yeah,
that.
so-
Yeah,
no.
but hopefully people
I would
enjoy.
have gone with Vienna sausage because if it's the right size nativity scene, that's
you're making people uncomfortable around here already at the start of this podcast, and I don't know if that's your job
Oh,
or not.
man.
But, Jeff, how about you, man? How was the holiday?
I was good. Good. We got out the Harleys. We rode.
There's 2 Jeffs on the screen, by the way. You'll see Jeff in tandem there.
Yeah, that's
Jeff and
Between-
Jeff feedback.
Jeff and Jeff
Jeff's
went-
multiverse.
Yeah,
Jeff-
Jeff and
Jeff-
Jeff went riding. So.
One's a little delayed when he talks, but other than that. So yeah, Jeff and I went bike riding yesterday,
Yes, we did.
and trying to get back and get in a little exercise. And evidently, I'm paralyzed from the shoulders down, but we were all good. We had a quiet holiday too, so I'll throw that out there. As
You
quiet
said-
is good.
You said you
Quiet's
did a lot
good
of
thing.
things working on your app.
Yeah, I'm actually working on the app.
was
and
that
I-
your abs or your app?
Both,
Okay.
but more on the app.
I've got an app. Bring in my app. No.
Yeah, we're trying to get some things going for this studio and all the things we're doing. So we've just we're almost to the point of finishing the Apple or the iOS app, and we've got a guy named Jay in Bangladesh who's helping with the
Jay in
Android.
Bangladesh.
Yes,
He's
yes,
on the
so
line
that's
right
how
now.
that works.
Is that Bangladesh, Alabama?
No. That's across the sea there.
That really is.
But he's
That's-
helping us out. He's a programmer more in Android, in the Android world, which is Windows-based thing. So
Have you
I
seen
need a
him?
little
Do
help
you know
with
he-
that. I'd rather not do
Does
it. I
he
could
really
do it probably,
exist? Is
but I
that
won't.
the
Yeah,
question?
I'm wondering, like, what is he like? Could he be some sort of like, I don't know.
He's a digital programmer, so he
Really?
is a coder. He codes
Coder.
and things like that.
Now, how do you
Yeah.
know he's not AI? Just some
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
AI unit over in Bangladesh.
So I'm saying-
Well,
could be
I'm a little
autism?
concerned that he might,
Shipped in,
be a spy
coming in
of
from
some sort.
Bangalore via Bangladesh, and it's just a server somewhere you're interacting with.
Yeah, it
Isn't that what we've
very
talked
well
about?
Could
Yeah.
be. It
So-
very well could be. That was on one of those shows, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's
I mean,
right.
Trying to
It's the
figure it
Abraham
out.
George show. He talked about all that crazy.
Yeah, all the
So-
I don't know, the reality to come. I guess it's going to be the future is coming very fast. Matter of fact, there's a title of a book we're going to have to read at some point. The future is faster than you think. Something to that effect.
Okay.
So we have to put that back in
Faster
the.
than you think. Yeah.
Dr. Rose, this is your show. This is Got Therapy. We've interrupted everything so far.
Well,
We
you know,
brought in the guys
you just
here to
said
help
something.
out.
I'm going to have to, because I normally say this.
Yes, you do.
That sounds like my wedding night.
What part of what I just said?
Future's fast.
Coming too
Then you
fast.
think,
Sorry, I thought I needed to.
Do we need to hear this, Dr. Hackett?
Yeah,
do we?
bada bing.
Yeah, this is what we do here, and I usually don't survive these things very well for some reason, but I
Well,
thought I'd
I know
give it a shot.
we had a topic. I don't know if it
Yeah.
fits, because we have two other people here who may also have some other ideas. There may be some things that we have other fertile minds,
Yes.
and so there could be something in there
Well,
that might because this is a show that in some way should touch a little bit on mental health or thoughts about things emotional, and
Right,
so there
right, that's what we
could
do.
be a bit of a potpourri. Can I say that, potpourri? Is that
good
right?
word.
yeah, you
That's
can.
a
It's
word.
Potpourri.
it's a fair word. And I have just to add that I have sort of tipped them off a little bit. I don't think they've done the reading on it, but they got the general
Well,
topic
we also had an
area,
idea.
so-
We had and I thought it
that's
would
what I try to help
might
out with
stroke just enough controversy, and that it might, and that there could be an audience out there to hear our 2 cents on the topic we'd sort of considered.
Right.
So we can make this a little open, right?
Yeah. So
um,
you send me a topic during for text, and I get the text, and I look at it, and just got, is this podcast material? ? And
yeah. And there
almost
wasn't any nudity.
almost
Notice-
99% is no. By the way.
Yeah. There was
So-
no nudity in this one. I
No,
thought
there
that
was no
that
nudity
made,
pictures, but we're gonna see what happens, and I just want to apologize up front to all the listeners, and of course Jeff and Tom here in the studio with us before we march forward.
because there's no nudity?
Well,
Yeah.
I could be naked from the waist down. You wouldn't know.
Okay,
I'm
the old,
afraid I would.
And
I'm right
on that
beside you.
note,
you don't need pants.
so on that note, what is the topic?
Yeah, there we go.
You know,
Dr. Hackett is asking for a little structure
Boy,
and
I
order
guess.
around this place.
Yes, he is. Well, the topic was that there was an